Hi there, it's Mike here from AVASK. I'm delighted to be coming to you live at the AVASK studio, and I've got some very special guests with me today. So I'm delighted to introduce Dan Ashburn from the Titan Network, Jacob McCoy, who's the Head of Business Development and Commercial Services for AVASK, and Mark Houghton, who is the Director of KATA Global Logistics and a Director at AVASK as well. So welcome everyone, it's lovely to see you all.
Good to be here, Mike.
Oh, fantastic! That wasn't awkward at all.
Good timing.
Cut that one.
So, guys, listen, it's absolutely wonderful to have you all here today. Now, what I thought it'd be nice to do is have basically a bit of a discussion about how you can globally expand your business, what the things you can do, how to make it easier, and all those sorts of things. So, I've got a couple of questions here on my nice cue card, and I'm going to run through those one at a time. So, my first question is, what are the top tips for running a successful e-commerce business with Titan and AVASK? Let's start with you, Dan.
I think in today's market, when it comes to running a successful business on Amazon, gone are the days where we can just take products off Alibaba, list them on Amazon and make a bunch of money. It's become a much more sophisticated game, and sophistication starts with having clarity of direction, which comes from understanding your numbers. Everyone really thinks about how can I generate more sales revenue, and often they immediately think to sell more products in more places or sell more of what I'm doing, when actually it takes a more detailed understanding of every layer of the business, right down to not just your cost of goods, but also how much it's costing you to ship, the logistics, and then taking that available margin in the business, that available profit margin, and then deciding, well, where should I focus the deployment of these advertising dollars to be most effective? So success today on Amazon is a full stack approach. It's definitely not just take a few products and kind of list them on Amazon.
That's a fantastic insight. Thank you so much. Jacob, from your perspective, what are your top tips for running a successful e-commerce business?
Yeah, I think to add to what Dan said, it has changed in terms of the market. There's, we see less and less resellers, less and less people kind of, just selling random products on Amazon, people trying to build brands. But from our perspective, working alongside sellers day to day, it's kind of, really focusing your efforts in certain areas where you can actually optimize. And that's not necessarily just like optimizing in terms of like listings, PPC, it's like everything else around it. So, I speak to people day to day about kind of how they're importing and how they're sending goods to certain countries. And we actually find there's lots of people who are very, very well established in terms of the Amazon game, but it's everything around that that they're not that kind of well versed in, and they actually end up spending a lot of money in areas where they don't need to. So, it's kind of focusing your efforts in those areas, see if you can kind of reduce costs in other areas, because we know Amazon fees are increasing, profit margins are getting lower and lower. So what can I do outside of the direct things that I'm looking at? Where else can I save money across the business?
Wonderful, thank you so much. And finally, Mark, well, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, from a logistics point of view, everyone sees logistics, okay, you're just moving the goods from A to B, or A to Z, or to a 3PL or a non-3PL. It's a very competitive market out there at the moment. So if you're a seller who's looking to expand, I would say just make sure that you're dealing with a logistics business who's very transparent with their costings. Factor it into your selling of your goods as well. Especially, manage those goods into the EU and into the US correctly, and make sure that they're all compliant and customs regulated. So logistics plays a big part of expanding any business, but for me, it's just making sure you get the right logistics partner, and that's where KATA come in.
Absolutely. You can, from what I understand, you can actually really make us quite volume discount, volume savings by choosing the right logistics partner. But I think that's even more savings can be had with when you're actually doing the thing where you're combining your resources into one provider rather than using several small providers. Use one provider that can provide a holistic solution, perhaps. That might be my tip to add to on top of this great advice. Okay, so what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out on their new business journey?
My advice to a new seller would be to focus on brand and product. In this business, if you get the product right, everything else falls in place. You can take a well-designed product and be absolutely rubbish at everything else on Amazon and you will make sales and profit. But you can take a rushed, poorly designed afterthought of a product and be really good at the advertising and all the marketing and the listing, and you are going to have an uphill battle and it's going to be a costly exercise over that period of time. So focus on serving a specific audience of people with a range of products that solve their problems, and only focus on selling to those customers. On Amazon, attempting to sell to everyone is selling to no one, and the money is made in the niches, the money is made in the passionate categories of people, often referred to as your avatar or ideal client or your audience, and use the customer reviews of your competitors to really pinpoint the use cases of those products, and focus everything about your brand's positioning, statement, its value promises, everything it produces that serves that customer to serve that specific use case and customer, and put all of your effort here, because everything else becomes easier.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, that's really, really good advice. Thank you, Jacob. From your perspective, what would you say? What would your advice be?
Well, I think there's many different angles I could go down, because there's loads of different advice you could give to a startup business, because there's so much information out there, like Amazon, e-commerce, like, you know, you're constantly being bombarded with information from different sources, and, you know, I've got experience from, you know, watching videos day to day about, you know, how to launch businesses, etc., all the content that gets put out there, so, you know, you're making sure you've kind of looked at it holistically and you've actually got your own approach to it, because, you know, you can watch one video with information about PPC as an example and it can give you one idea, and then you can be looking at another one and it give you another idea. So making sure you've kind of given that holistic approach, you've actually got your launch plan, you know what you're trying to do, you know what you're trying to target, don't consistently change your mind. I think consistency is key, and making sure you're kind of consistently trying to achieve your target.
Absolutely. No, very good advice there. And Mark, what about you?
For me, it's compliance. Making sure that your product is compliant, making sure that before you launch a product that you've met all the regulations to ensure that that product can be safely shipped abroad. From the point of labeling to the product testing itself, and also that you meet all the regulations with the logistics, itself as well, especially on, say, the supply chain. You have to make sure that if you're launching any new product into the UK or to the US or anywhere in the world, really, you have to make sure it's compliant and you meet all those regulations. So it's quite straightforward.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and it kind of links in what Dan was saying. You know, if you've gone to all that effort to really make like your passion product, and like I've seen it so many cases, like they might focus on, okay, this is the actual product, this is what it looks like, this is the branding I want in it, but then you try and get it into market and you haven't actually thought about compliance, and then suddenly your goods are stuck at the border or your Amazon accounts are shut down, so that all that time and effort and that that passion you put into it is then, relatively useless, or it's costing you a lot of money and you're not actually able to sell for a long time. So, I think it's a really, really key point.
I think that comes back to a broader, all-encompassing point. Know the market you're getting into, know the category you're getting into, understand the product type you're selling, and then ensure that you're executing the correct strategic plan for that product. As Jacob said, you could watch 10 different videos on PPC, but I can tell you from delivering nearly 9 figures of revenue this year, the PPC strategy that's correct for you is dependent on the product type you're selling, because the PPC strategy for a giftable product or a highly browsable product is completely different to that of a more commoditized product. And then the same goes for compliance. Each product type has different levels of regulation. Amazon is very clear in what they expect. Then you've got obviously global, regional, geographical regulation, and you can do all of that work. And if you don't know the type of product that you're getting into and the market you're getting into, you're effectively closing your eyes and hoping it works. You need to understand the exact steps for that product, for that category, every step within the process. And that's not just the marketing, it's in the buying, it's in the logistics at every stage throughout that kind of process.
That's very nice. Thank you, gentlemen. No, that's really good points you just made there. I suppose, that brings me on to the next question. What is needed when you're going to be expanding overseas? If you're going to be, or even starting your business, what do you need to start? How do you define that?
I think to be honest, it's a very difficult question to answer directly, because you've got so many different markets. But I'd say like the key is actually having your business plan and exactly what you're going to plan to do. Like when you're looking at a new market, you need to set out the objectives. You need to set a list of things that you need to achieve, like compliance, kind of logistics, and all of that stuff you need to focus, and that's going to change per market because the compliance in one market is not the same as another one. So like, I could sit here and start listing out different compliance requirements, but essentially if you have a business plan around launching into a new market, that is going to then enable you to kind of establish exactly like the different details that you need.
And I think within that, it's about having a focused plan of intention. I see one of the larger mistakes that sellers make is believing that everything will sell everywhere. And once you get into that, you start to realize the cost and time and effort and complexity required, which AVASK here do an outstanding job of kind of solving. But before you even decide to expand, I think it's key as a seller to do the proper analysis, understand that the product you're selling in America, is there demand for it in Germany? Is there demand for it in Spain? In those marketplaces, if there is demand, what's the level of competition? Are you going to have an easier time testing in France, for instance, or the UK over Germany? And then working through all the different cost centers, including your sales tax and everything that kind of gets taken from that sale, to understand what the true gross profit of that potential is, and then focus your capital and time efforts on where you're going to produce the highest return on investment of both capital and time.
That is a very good point. No, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. So how do you define success, or what would you say is successful?
For me, the old cliche saying of revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. We're definitely in an era now, a chapter where, as I said, and as has been mentioned, you've got Amazon fees increasing, your cost per click on Amazon advertising increasing, material costs have increased, cost inflation just globally impacting, cost of logistics, fuel, everything is kind of suppressing margin. So gone are the days where we're chasing these huge revenue goals. I think success for the business owner is really defined by their life goals, and once they've established what that life goal is, whether it is to build and sell or whether they want to build a cash cow business, and then defining what that kind of profitability goal is to deliver on that, and then tapering how quickly you want to expand and compound that growth, because growth costs money. So I think success has to really be defined by your business goal and then working it back down to the bottom line.
Thank you. That's really good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd kind of replicate that as well. I think, setting your own goals, and I talk to businesses all the time where, either they're looking, just to gain a bit of money each month, they just an extra bit of revenue on the side from their job, or they're looking to build a brand and generally for selling it. So like, defining success really does depend on your goals. And even I spoke to a seller recently, it's he wants to build something for his grandchildren and his children. So, that is a much different kind of way of measuring success against, a huge multinational corporation is just trying to kind of add to their portfolio. So yeah, it's very case specific, but that's why I always, talk to sellers and say you've got to define those goals. Like if going back to launching a business, if you haven't got those goals and you're just kind of working on it day in, day out, it's like, okay, what are you trying to achieve? So you do really need to set those out.
Very good point. Thank you so much there. Okay, Mark, anything from your perspective?
I think the guys pretty much covered it, but from my point of view, I would say stay true to your beliefs. If you believe in your product and you believe that you can get it into market, and you've done all your due diligence and your compliance and you meet all the regulations, there's no reason why you can't deliver. So I think, a lot of people start up these ideas, especially from a seller's point of view. I've got this product, this is fantastic, I'm going to get it launched, it's going to make me a load of money. And like you all say, I think sometimes they lose sight, but if you stay and focus and you believe in your product, then it should be a success.
And I think with that as well, your risk tolerance as an entrepreneur factors into it. Like when I started in this game, there wasn't kind of professional financing available. There wasn't the ability to leverage credit or capital or specific to the type of business and industry. Now there is in abundance. And how fast or slow you want to go in this game depends on, one, being clear on what your goal is, because if you don't know what you want, how do you know what to ask for? And then secondly, understanding the strategy or the business plan or the strategy that you're going to execute in line with your tolerance for risk and how quickly you want to achieve that. And then, as Jacob said, it's about in those days where you're waking up and it feels like the world's on fire, or you don't really know what button to click next, always come back to your plan and stick to the plan.
Correct.
The biggest mistake I see sellers make is come away from their own plan because they've heard someone speak on a stage telling them this shiny object's the newest thing.
Yeah.
The ones that are most successful are the ones that are focused, considered. They take that 20% of innovation, but 80% of their focus is on their plan.
Really, absolutely great advice there, I think. Okay, so what is the one mistake that a seller would need to avoid at all costs when they're starting?
Not following the data.
Very good.
Biggest mistake I see.
Very good point there.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. I think it's, to kind of outline in one point. But yeah, just going back, and I know I'm repeating, but just outlining your business plan and your goals.
Yeah, and same again. I think for me, it's just compliance. If you don't understand compliance when you're launching a product, then you're going to find it very difficult to expand into the markets you wish to. So you need to do your due diligence and make sure that your product is compliant and meets all the regulations, and then you're good to go. But also, like I said before, believe in your product. There's a lot of industries out there. AVASK, can help you. TITAN can help you. So don't feel alone.
That's absolutely wonderful. No, thank you very much for that. That's really good. I think that's the end of part 1. So listen, we're going to stay here and we'll be back shortly. Thanks very much. See you soon.